There's a 24-year-old in Austin right now who makes $78,000 a year. Good salary, better than most people his age. He graduated with minimal student debt, landed a tech-adjacent role, and by every traditional measure, he's ahead. But here's the thing, he has $1,100 in savings. He leases a car he doesn't need for a commute he doesn't have. He pays for 9 subscriptions he forgot he signed up for. And every Friday night, he drops somewhere between $80 and $140 on dinner and drinks, because that's just what his friend group does. He's not irresponsible, he's not reckless. He's doing exactly what the culture around him trained him to do. And 15 years from now, he's going to look at his bank account the same way a 39-year-old millennial does today, confused, a little heartbroken, wondering where all of it went. Because the money mistakes millennials made aren't ancient history. They're happening again, right now, in real time, with a new generation that has better tools, better access to information, and somehow the exact same blind spots. My name is Williams, and today I'm going to show you the 6 financial traps that destroyed millennial wealth and why Gen Z is walking straight into every single one of them with their eyes wide open. But more importantly, I'm going to give you the math, the psychology, and the specific moves that can break the cycle before it locks in. Let's start with the trap that does the most damage and gets the least attention. Lifestyle normalization. Not lifestyle inflation, that's when you earn more and spend more. Normalization is sneakier than that. It's when you start spending like someone who earns more than you do before you've actually earned it. Millennials did this with housing. They stretched into apartments and mortgages they couldn't comfortably afford because living in the right neighborhood felt like a requirement, not a choice. Gen Z is doing the same thing, just with different categories. It's a $40 lunch delivery 3 times a week. It's the $160 monthly fitness membership when a $30 gym is 4 blocks away. It's the annual international trip financed by a credit card because everyone in your feed went somewhere this summer and you feel like you're falling behind if you didn't. Here's why this is so destructive. When spending becomes normalized, it stops feeling like a decision. It becomes invisible. And invisible spending is the kind that compounds against you for decades. Let me give you the math. Say you're 25 and you're spending $400 a month on things that feel normal but aren't necessary. That's $4,800 a year. Now, if you redirected even half of that $2,400 a year into a basic index fund, returning an average of 8% annually, by the time you're 50, that single adjustment is worth over $178,000. You didn't need a raise, you didn't need a side hustle, you just needed to notice what you'd stopped noticing. Millennials learned this lesson at 38. You can learn it at 24, but only if you're honest about what normal actually costs. The second trap is one that sounds empowering but quietly hollows out your financial foundation. It's the belief that passion should drive every career decision. Millennials were told to follow their passion and the money would follow. Beautiful advice, terrible economics. Entire graduating classes chose careers based on emotional alignment instead of market demand, and then spent a decade trying to earn a living wage in fields that didn't pay one. Gen Z heard that story and adjusted slightly. They're more pragmatic about income, more open to tech careers and remote work. But the new version of the same trap looks like this. Job hopping for culture fit instead of building compounding skills. Quitting roles after 8 months because the work didn't feel aligned. Prioritizing flexibility so aggressively that they never stay anywhere long enough to reach the income tier where real wealth building begins. There's data behind this. The average tenure for a worker under 30 is now about 2 years and 3 months. Changing jobs can be smart. Strategic moves between companies often come with salary bumps of 10 to 20%, but there's a threshold. If you never stay long enough to get promoted into senior roles, you cap your earning potential at the mid-level forever. A person who strategically stays at 2 companies over 10 years, getting promoted twice at each, will almost always out-earn the person who jumped 6 times chasing a slightly better title or a ping pong table in the office. Building wealth requires building leverage, And leverage comes from depth, not just movement. The third trap is the most psychologically complex one. It's financial identity fusion, the merging of your spending habits with your sense of self. Millennials did this with brands. They became Apple people or Whole Foods shoppers or SoulCycle members, and those identities came with monthly price tags that were almost impossible to cut because reducing spending felt like losing a piece of who they were. Gen Z has taken this even further. Your spending is now your aesthetic, it's your content, it's the visual language of your entire social existence. The Stanley Cup wasn't just a water bottle, it was a personality trait. The Dyson Airwrap isn't a styling tool, it's a signal that you belong to a particular tribe. And when your purchases become your identity, frugality doesn't just feel uncomfortable, it feels like self-erasure. This is where the psychology gets dark. When your identity is tied to consumption, every smart financial decision triggers a small identity crisis. Downgrading your apartment feels like admitting failure. Canceling subscriptions feels like falling behind. Cooking at home instead of eating out feels like you're not living the life you're supposed to be living. And so you keep spending, not because you want the things, but because you need to remain the person the things represent. Breaking this cycle requires something that no app or budget template can give you. It requires building an identity around what you own financially, your savings rate, your investment balance, your months of runway, instead of what you own physically. The person with 6 months of expenses saved and a net worth that grows every quarter has more freedom than the person with a curated apartment and $900 in checking. Freedom just doesn't photograph as well. If this is helping you think differently about your own habits, take 2 seconds to hit that like button. It genuinely helps the channel reach more people who need to hear this. The fourth trap is debt tolerance. Millennials normalize student loan debt. Entire conversations centered around how much you owed, not whether you should have borrowed that much in the first place. It became a shared wound, almost a badge of belonging. Gen Z has less student debt on average, that's real progress, but the tolerance shifted. It moved to buy now, pay later platforms, to credit card balances carried month to month, to auto loans, stretched over 72 and 84 months to make the payment look manageable while the total cost balloons. The average Gen Z consumer now has access to more credit products before age 25 than any previous generation. And the framing is always the same. It's positioned as flexibility, as access, as financial empowerment. But debt that funds consumption is never empowering. It's a claim on your future income. Every monthly payment you commit to today is a dollar you can't invest tomorrow. Let me show you what this looks like over time. Say you're 26 and you're carrying $400 a month in combined payments, a car loan, a couple of buy now, pay later balances, a credit card minimum. That $400 a month, redirected into investments after those debts are cleared, grows to over $350,000 by the time you're 55 at average market returns. You're not choosing between a car and no car. You're choosing between a newer car now and $350,000 later. When you frame it that way, the math makes the decision for you. But only if you see the real cost, and the financial industry is designed to make sure you never do. The fifth trap is the optimization illusion. This is the belief that if you just find the right system, the perfect budgeting app, the ideal investment strategy, the optimal credit card reward stack, everything will click into place. Millennials spent years optimizing the small stuff. They tracked every latte, they clipped digital coupons, they obsessed over whether to pay the $2.99 for guacamole. And while they were optimizing pennies, they ignored the 3 or 4 massive financial decisions that actually determine wealth: where you live, what you drive, how much you save automatically, and whether you invest consistently. Gen Z has the same tendency, just with newer tools. They'll spend 3 hours researching the best high-yield savings account to earn an extra $40 a year in interest, but they won't spend 30 minutes setting up an automatic investment that would generate $40,000 over a decade. Optimization feels productive. It gives you the sensation of financial control without requiring the uncomfortable structural changes that actually move the needle. Here's the principle that cuts through all of it. 80% of your financial outcome is determined by 3 to 4 big decisions: housing, transportation, savings rate, investment consistency. Get those right, and you can be sloppy with everything else and still build wealth. Get those wrong, and no amount of coupon clipping or cashback optimization will save you. Now, the sixth trap, and this is the one that quietly ruins more financial futures than any market crash or recession ever could. It's a delay disguised as patience. Millennials told themselves they'd start investing when they made more money, when the student loans were paid off, when they felt stable, when the market calmed down. And for millions of them, that day never came. They waited 10, 15 years, and every year they waited cost them exponentially more than they realized. Gen Z is doing the same thing with different languages. I'll start investing when I understand it better. I'll save more when I get my next raise. I'm focusing on experiences right now. I'll worry about retirement later. This feels reasonable at the moment, but the math is merciless. A person who invests $300 a month starting at 25 will have roughly $860,000 by 60 at average returns. The same person, same amount, starting at 35, around 375,000. 5 years of delay doesn't cost you 5 years of growth. It costs you nearly half your outcome. Half. That's not a rounding error. That's the difference between retiring with options and retiring with anxiety. And if you're getting something real from this, consider subscribing. I make videos like this every week, no hype, just the math and psychology behind how money actually works. So here's what you do. Starting this week, not next month, not when things settle down, this week. First, open your bank statement right now and identify your 3 largest non-essential recurring expenses. Not the ones you enjoy most, the ones you forgot were even there. Cancel or downgrade at least one before the next billing cycle hits. Second, set up an automatic investment, even if it's just $50 a month, into a low-cost index fund. The amount almost doesn't matter right now. What matters is that the pattern exists. You're building the muscle of consistency, and that muscle is worth more than any single deposit. Third, calculate your actual savings rate, not what you think it is, what the numbers say it is. Take your monthly income, subtract every dollar that goes out, and divide what's left by your income. If that number is below 15%, you now know exactly what needs to change. The number won't lie to you the way your feelings about money will. Fourth, write down the 3 biggest financial decisions you'll make in the next 2 years: housing, transportation, career moves. For each one, calculate not just the monthly cost, but the 10-year total cost, including what that money could have earned if invested. When you see a $45,000 car as a $104,000 decision, you make very different choices. Now, let me take you back to that 24-year-old in Austin, because his story isn't over. Nothing is locked in yet. He's not behind, he's early. Earlier than any millennial who's reading this and wishing they'd heard these numbers at his age. The difference between repeating the millennial cycle and breaking it isn't information. Gen Z has more financial information available than any generation in human history. The difference is whether you act on the pattern before the pattern acts on you. Every generation gets the same window. A few years in your 20s, when your expenses are still flexible, your habits aren't fully hardened, and time is so overwhelmingly on your side that even modest, boring, consistent decisions create outcomes that look like magic 30 years later. Millennials missed that window. Not because they were foolish, because nobody showed them the math early enough for it to matter. You've seen the math now. What you do with it is the only thing that separates your story from theirs. Your financial decisions aren't accidents, they're patterns. And the best time to rewrite a pattern is before it finishes writing to you. Am Williams. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in the next video.